So welcome, everyone. We're on week 4 of our series on the Brahmaviharas, the beautiful mental qualities that we want to cultivate. So we started with metta, loving friendliness, which is towards all beings, wishing well for all beings. And then the next 2 weeks, we did sort of subcategories: compassion for those who are suffering, and mudita, a feeling of rejoicing for those who are doing well, who've done a good deed. And then based on these other 3 Brahmaviharas, we have equanimity that arises. Now I apologize, I'm feeling a little under the weather today, and I don't trust my brain to remember all the salient points. So I'm going to do the boring thing of reading my notes, but so you don't miss anything. So the Pali word for equanimity is Upekkha, and equanimity or Upekkha means looking on, observing with an evenness, calm, unflappability. And I believe this is because we see the 3 characteristics of all things. So those 3 characteristics are anicca, which is impermanence or unreliability, dukkha, which is suffering, and anatta, which is just saying that we're not some kind of a fixed entity. We're, changing all the time. And so when we can see impermanence or unreliability, then we don't get upset when things don't go as planned, because we know things are unreliable or they're impermanent. And we don't get upset when good things like a holiday end, because we know it's impermanent. Can we turn on the light there? No, this one here. Yeah. Thanks. Old eyes need light. Dukkha is suffering due to desire. And we suffer because we want the current situation to be different than it is. But how it is reality. And we're fighting a losing battle if we try and fight reality. Instead, with wisdom, we want to evaluate the most skillful way to deal with the current situation, and then put in the causes and conditions for the outcome that we want to have, but realizing we don't have total control. We have some, but we don't have total control. So it's important to accept that our wished for outcome may not occur. So that means basically not being attached to a particular outcome. And that allows us to be equanimous. So I was going to give an example here from my own life for this. When I knew I was going to be moving to Canmore, I spoke to the head of Alberta Mental Health Services out, and he guaranteed me a job when, I was working for Alberta Mental Health Services when I was in Calgary. And so I spoke to the head, and he guaranteed me a position here in Canmore when I moved a few years later. And I came out and I met the staff and then they showed me where my future office would be. And it was just felt like it was all set. But then before my move happened, the head of Alberta Mental Health changed. The fellow I'd spoken to moved to Victoria or somewhere on the island, and we had a new fellow who I knew. I worked with him in Calgary. And so I spoke to him about the previous arrangements, but he said, oh, it's too early to talk about it. So he wouldn't discuss anything with me, saying it's too early. So I waited until 6 months before the move. And then I tried to contact him, and he was on some kind of a holiday or leave, like he just wasn't available. So I phoned out here and got a hold of the psychologist at the clinic. And he just said bluntly, we don't need another psychiatrist. We already have one. So like, so I did not have equanimity right away. I was so shocked. I just felt like I was falling, like free falling down this bottomless abyss or something for 2 or 3 days. But then somehow the equanimity kicked in. And then I started putting in the causes and conditions for, it had to be a different plan now. And so now I was going to have to figure out how to work in private practice, which I had never done. So then I contacted the head of the hospital and found out I could rent a room that wasn't being used in the hospital, met with the physicians out here and said I was coming and could they give me referrals. And then I'd given my notice at Alberta Mental Health in Calgary, so I had to go back to them and say, can I at least work 1 day a week for the next while so that I have a little bit of income while things were being built up. So that was sort of putting in the causes and conditions for, something positive to come out. So everything worked out great. It was okay, but may not have been. So it's important to remember that when we take action, we do our best, putting in the causes and conditions for the desired outcome, but very important, as I said, not to be attached because we're not in total control. What happens, happens. And then it's a new thing of, okay, now how do I deal with this new situation? So if it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, it's important not to stab yourself with the second arrow, but just, okay, this is reality. What do I have to do to deal with it? And when you're taking some kind of action, like don't force things, wait, try and find the best timing to do whatever it is that you're planning to do. And try and feel equanimous, knowing that you've done the best you can in this situation. Okay, the third characteristic. So we got 3 characteristics of everything. Anicca, which is impermanence or unreliability. Dukkha, which is suffering. And the third one is anatta. And that's realizing that we're not made out of cement. Don't think that, oh, well, this is just how I am. Because we're not some solid, unchanging self. We're a verb. We're always changing. So it's like we're a verb, a flowing verb, and our actions, speech, and thoughts and emotions are due to cause, whatever the current causes and conditions are, and of course, based on past causes and conditions. So when we do or say something unskillful, which leads to suffering, hopefully we'll recognize that and make an effort to put in the conditions for more skillful speech or actions. And when it's an unskillful thought that comes up, then it's important not to own it. Just understand that it arose because of past causes and conditions in our life. And then again, make an effort to put in better causes, different causes and conditions at this moment that will lead to more skillful thoughts or emotions. So, for example, if you're interacting with somebody and anger arises in you because you've taken the other person's speech or actions personally, instead of seeing it as a reflection of them, what's going on with them, you sort of take it personally. So remember that anger is like holding a hot coal. You're wanting to throw this hot coal at somebody you're angry with, but all the time you're burning yourself. So we don't want to do that. So as soon as you realize you're holding that hot coal, you want to there's a couple of ways that you can help in that immediate situation. And one is to bring to mind the positive qualities of the person that you're with. Like if it's somebody that we all have a mixture of skillful and unskillful qualities. And so if you know this person, you probably know a whole bunch of good qualities that they have, as well as, maybe they're just tired or hungry or who knows what's going on that they're beacon off at you. But if you can bring to mind their good qualities, then that can help you let go of your anger. And the other is just to bring up compassion, just realizing, they're behaving the way they are because of past causes and conditions, and maybe they just don't, have a skillful way of dealing with whatever the situation is. They've just learned unskillful ways to deal with it. Everybody wants to be happy. So whatever they're doing, it's because of, they're doing their best, even though it's not very skillful, they're doing their best to be happy. And maybe another thing you can do is bring to mind when you haven't been so perfect, when you've acted unskillfully or whatever towards somebody else. And then you can realize, hey, we're just the same. Maybe you do have more skills than the other person, but the basic bottom line is, we're basically all the same. And so that helps with compassion. Now, it's important to remember that equanimity is based on the previous 3 Brahmaviharas: loving friendliness. I told you my brain's dead. Loving friendliness, compassion, and then rejoicing in the happiness of others. So that makes it not sort of an even feeling that's based on an uninterested sort of passive looking on. Like it's not a cold or callous thing. You've probably experienced that with some people who are staying calm and cool, but there's that real feeling of coldness or callousness about them. That's not what equanimity is about. It's going to be imbued with the other Brahmaviharas. Now, just like we can have 2 kinds of mindfulness, you can mindfully do something loving or kind, or you can mindfully rob a bank, right? So there's skillful and unskillful mindfulness. Well, in the same way, there's skillful and unskillful equanimity. So here's a quote from the Buddha. This is from Digha Nikaya 21. There are 2 kinds of equanimity, I say, that which you should cultivate and that which you should not cultivate. When I cultivate this kind of equanimity, unskillful qualities grow and skillful qualities decline. You should not cultivate that kind of equanimity. When I cultivate this kind of equanimity, unskillful qualities decline and skillful qualities grow. You should cultivate this kind of equanimity. That's why I said there are 2 kinds of equanimity. That's how a meditator fittingly practices for the cessation of the proliferation of opinions. So what the Buddha is telling us is that how we determine if the equanimity is sort of the skillful kind is that our unskillful qualities will decrease and skillful qualities will increase. And those skillful qualities are the ones that we chanted in the Parami chant at the beginning of the evening. So generosity, morality, energy, loving friendliness, equanimity, determination, letting go, patience, truthfulness, wisdom. There's probably more, but those are the ones mentioned in that chant. Now, in this next sutta of the Buddhas that I'm going to read, the Buddha equates equanimity to a well-tuned instrument. This is Anguttara Nikaya, chapter 6, number 55. And he's speaking to a musician. Now, what do you think, Sona? Before, when you were a house dweller, were you skilled at playing the veena? Yes, Lord. And just for fun, I looked up what a veena is. It's an Indian lute. And it's not there, so just give me a minute. There we go. Okay, so can you see that's what it looks like. And I don't know what this little blob here is, but anyway, that's a veena. And what do you think? When the strings of your veena were too taut, was your veena in tune and playable? No, Lord. And what do you think? When the strings of your veena were too loose, was your veena in tune and playable? No, Lord. And what do you think? When the strings of your veena were neither too taut nor too loose, but tuned to be right on pitch, was your veena in tune and playable? Yes, Lord. In the same way, Sona, over-aroused persistence leads to restlessness. Overly slack persistence leads to laziness. Thus, you should determine the right pitch for your persistence. So equanimity is this balance point between restlessness and laziness. Now, it's important to know that equanimity does not mean being a doormat. You definitely want to be assertive when the situation, calls for it, because we need to take care of ourselves. We have to know what our limitations are, our boundaries, things like that. But ideally, when you're responding in a situation like this, your words and body language are equanimous, not tainted with anger or irritability. And if it's appropriate in the situation, you can use Tonglen. Tonglen is I've talked about it here before. It's a Tibetan practice. I first learned about it from Dr. Ong, my Chinese medicine teacher. But so what you do when you're with somebody who's really upset or whatever, it's sort of like you breathe in their distress, their anger, their whatever they're suffering through your left nostril down into we call it the hara, the dantian, the energy center. And you can imagine whatever it is, like red or black or some shape or color, whatever. And then you want to transform it into love and light. So I usually think of an eclipse, like the moon or the sun is dark because of the shadow. And then I just sort of imagine the shadow moving away. And so I just image this sort of sparkly energy of love and light. And then you breathe that out of your right nostril into the person. So you're not keeping, like you've breathed in their negative emotion, but you don't keep it. You transform it and then you breathe it out. So it's not staying in you and you're imaging filling the other person. And then who knows if in some it's not going to be appropriate in every situation, but in some situations, you remaining sort of calm and loving just may help shift the other person. So, but things can shift. And I've certainly had that experience many times doing that kind of a practice. Yeah, other times you may just have to get out of that energy field, like just leave the situation as soon as you can. Now, on a daily basis, we can bring equanimity into our meditation practice So that just means, like, say if your breath is your meditation object, you're just accept your breath how it is, instead of like, if it's kind of choppy, or if it's short, or it's too like whatever. If you're sort of wanting it to be a certain way, then again you're fighting with reality. So if you can just be accepting, just be equanimous with however your meditation object is to you. Yeah, they say watch your breath as you would watch the wind in the trees. You're not trying to control it, you're just being accepting, equanimous with it. And then in daily life, when we're making decisions, you can ask, where's my mind at? Is it in a state where I should be making a decision? If it's very biased due to the hindrances, or you're very emotional, then you want to wait, because it's not, you're going to be in tunnel vision then and not make have a chance of not making a very good decision. Yeah, the best time to make a decision is when your mind is peaceful and at ease, like i.e. equanimous. And then secondly, you can ask, will this choice, if I've decided, well, okay, this is what I want to do, will this choice be for my long-term benefit? That is, increase good qualities and decrease the bad qualities. Now, we've been talking about ways that we can make an effort to have equanimity arise, but it can also unfold naturally. So here's another segment from the Buddha on this. Firstly, the teacher or a respected spiritual companion teaches Dhamma to a meditator. That meditator feels inspired by the meaning and the teaching in that Dhamma. Feeling inspired, joy springs up. Being joyful, rapture springs up. When the mind is full of rapture, the body becomes tranquil. When the body is tranquil, one feels bliss. And when blissful, the mind becomes immersed in samadhi, that's stillness. And next, equanimity arises. So that was a description of many of the factors of awakening, which are mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, samadhi, which is experienced as blissful, and equanimity. And equanimity is the major quality present in the fourth jhana, the fourth level of this profound stillness. And then once you emerge from that state, then the evenness of the equanimity remains with you and allows you to see reality with clarity. And then that allows you to have the experience, the stages of awakening, with the combination of mindfulness and equanimity. Here's another quote from the Buddha, Digha Nikaya 16. Meditators, I will teach you 7 more principles that prevent decline. As long as the meditators develop the awakening factors of mindfulness, investigation, energy, rapture, tranquility, immersion, equanimity, they can expect growth, not decline. As long as these 7 principles that prevent decline last among the meditators, and as long as the meditators are seen following them, they can expect growth, not decline. Yeah, so we can expect our meditation practice to move along towards full awakening. In relation to our sensory experiences, the Buddha says in Anguttara Nikaya, chapter 4, number 195, a meditator seeing a sight with their eyes is neither happy nor sad. They remain equanimous, mindful, and aware. And the same thing with hearing a sound with their ears, smelling an odor with their nose, tasting a flavor with their tongue, feeling a touch with their body, knowing an idea with their mind. They're neither happy nor sad. They remain equanimous, mindful, and aware. And now, as we've talked about with the other Brahmaviharas, we talked about radiating them in all the directions, all the 4 directions, and above and below, and it's the same Same thing with equanimity. And then we also, with the others, talked about antidotes. So remember, for metta, it's an antidote to ill will. Compassion was an antidote to thoughts of harming. Mudita was an antidote to discontent. And equanimity is an antidote to desire. Now I want to end. Bodhipal and I had a discussion earlier today, so I just want to end with that. There's a form of equanimity that we experience very frequently every day. I don't know if you remember the word Vedana. It refers to feeling tone that arises with every sensory experience. And the feeling tones are either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And neutral is a form of equanimity. It's not a developed form, but it's still a type of equanimity. So for every sound we hear, every sight we see, every smell, taste, and touch we experience, we also experience a feeling tone, and also for all of our thoughts, there's a feeling tone comes with them. And the major tone we experience is neutral. So when the tone is pleasant, we have a tendency to go out and want to grasp at it. And if it's unpleasant, then we want to push away. But when it's neutral, we ignore it. So this means that we're missing out on a tremendous opportunity for peace. A neutral feeling is a peaceful feeling. If we can develop an appreciation for this ignored neutral tone, we can bring a huge amount of peace into our lives that we've been missing. I remember one of the first retreats I went to with Thich Nhat Hanh. He said, everybody's coming to me and saying, I want peace, I want peace. And then he said, when they get it, they go, boring. So it's sort of like, it's sort of a subtle thing that we need to get used to. Just give me a second here.